So we have one more talk before we have a break. And I think this is going to be a talk on one of the hardest things, at least from my perspective, that we see our startups struggle with, which is pricing and purchasing behavior. So Richard White, co-founder from UserVoice, is going to come up and tell us what I'm sure are some hard-fought lessons there.
Thank you. Yeah, so my goal for this talk is not to kind of give you any sort of like broad sweeping ideas, but to really just tell you the story of all the various things we've experimented with and tried in terms of pricing or just any kind of instrumentation of our billing system or of our freemium product in general. One of my favorite things I like to lead off almost every talk with is this quote from Paul Buchheit, which is limited life experience plus overgeneralization equals advice. So I try to avoid that. Quick show of hands, who's willing to put their hand up? All right. Now, who's heard of, you leave them up. So this gives me like a control group, right? Like this is your denominator. Who's heard of UserVoice before? Okay. Who saw this talk last year? Who saw it posted online at 500 startups? Okay, a couple of you. So I did this talk last year, and I really covered the first about 2.5 years of UserVoice. We're about 5 years old now. And it covered a lot of things. In fact, I covered free trials. So we originally had 15-day free trials, went to 30-day free trials. We saw no difference for our product. However, trial extensions have been hugely successful. So after this, I would recommend going on 500 startups. It's a 2-part thing. It's pretty in-depth. It's pretty intense, and goes through a lot of the stats that we saw. Again, your mileage may vary, and that's why I asked if you know about UserVoice. We are a platform to help companies like yours and web-based companies manage customer support, gather customer feedback, et cetera, et cetera. We are a freemium product. Free all the way up to charging per seat, roughly $100 per seat, and a couple price points in between. So just keep that in the back of your head when you look at these stats. This is not a gaming company, or our average revenue per user is much more than $5 per seat or something like that. Okay, I'm talking fast because I don't have a lot of time, and there's a shit ton of numbers coming at you. There you go. All right, free shit. So we were just talking about free shit, and so we launched this help desk product. If you know about UserVoice, you may know that we didn't always have this. We launched this help desk product in 2011. And when we launched this help desk product, we did it to kind of round out our product feature set so we could be like an all-in-one solution for customer communication and support. And these were our price points. So we didn't kind of bundle it in as functionality into UserVoice. We kind of bundled it as a separate product. There was UserVoice feedback and there's UserVoice help desk. We did this for marketing reasons. We really wanted to convey people like this is a whole new product. This is a big addition. This is not just an extra feature point. The downside to that is it created this complexity of now we have 3 products. We have 2 products in a bundled version. But we also didn't make it free. So our classic product was free. This product we said, well, we'll make a $5 version, a really cheap entry-level version. Because we didn't make it free because we were afraid of the support costs. Going back to Jules' talk, we were worried that it might cost a lot to support it. But that turned out to be kind of not, the support costs weren't as bad as we thought. And we really want people to be using as much of our product as possible. And this is another thing for freemium. If you're a freemium product, you want people using as much of your product as possible because that creates stickiness. Stickiness leads to monetization. And so we looked at our stats. We saw that when you look at this grid and all these price points, 70% of people would sign up for the free product, which didn't include our latest and greatest help desk product. And only 17% would sign up for one of these $5 plans. And so we said, well, we should try to fix that, right? We should try to get these people. Freemium is a marketing tool. So if you're going to use it, you want them using all of your products. So how do we maximize this usage? So what we decided to do was to take it and actually move it down to let's make all of this free, right? So let's take all of this and make it free. And so how do we go about doing that? So one, we looked at how much revenue this represented. So these $5 plans here really represented less than 2% of revenue in terms of recurring MRR. So that was easy. So that we can do with that, 2%, no big deal. But what we were also really concerned about was would putting free here cannibalize these other paid plans, right? Would it completely undercut the ability for us to convert on these higher paid plans? So to that point, we did an A/B test. And an A/B test is actually not true because it wasn't a true A/B test. It's what I call a serial A/B test. So you run one version of the site for a week to baseline, and then you run another version of the site for a week to kind of do the control. And what we wanted to do with that was just to test, do we see a dramatic change in the profile of our signups when we launch that free? And the answer was we don't. By the way, serial A/B tests are really hard to pull off because if you have traffic spikes and things like that, it's hard to tell. So we had to do, I think, 2 iterations of that A/B test. But eventually it said, you're fine, conversion rates or sign-up rates on these larger paid plans will not be impacted by this. So we launched these free plans, and we had the desired effect. We went from 20% on that free feedback plan to 70%. So they almost completely inverted, right? So people all gravitated towards, of course, I want as much functionality as I can get for free. So that was great. Trial signups went up 30% across the board. That's also great. Paid trial signups actually went down 7%. So our A/B test lied to us, right? Or rather, they're just, we knew they wouldn't go down by an order of magnitude, but they did go down some. So they went down 7%. And more troublingly and kind of expectedly, trial conversions within the first 30 days went down 34%, which makes sense because we just took out a whole group of things that were probably most like, I think they're our highest converting plans, right? A $5 plan isn't asking a lot to get paid $5. So trial conversion went down quite a bit. However, remember our stated goal here was increasing activity. Why do we increase activity? Well, because like Jules said, our product, the more people use it, it's kind of one of those things where people can see it being used. You might be a consumer, we might give you a free version of UserVoice. You support him, he sees you using UserVoice and signs up. So we care about activity. And activity works, right? When we made that free, we basically tripled the number of accounts that are active after 90 days. And when we go back and look at the stats now, we actually see that number held true through 9 months. So it wasn't just kind of like we got an early spike. That actually worked. The freemium model here works. And even though we had that 34% drop in conversion rate in the first 30 days, when we actually look at it over looking at these cohorts, it basically is kind of a negligible or kind of almost within the error margin drop in terms of trial conversion. So we lost trial conversion in the first 30 days, but we made it up over time in terms of people using the product and getting used to it. And so same thing with LTV and MRR. So all of those kind of monetization stats held pretty static even though we got rid of a whole paid tier. So that was successful. All right, next one. Well, where'd the rest of the G go? All right. The next thing we looked at was weekend billing. So we have a billing system, and it runs every day and charges all the people that need to be charged. And we used to run it on Saturdays and Sundays, which is not a problem because your payment gateway will accept charges on the weekends. However, when things go wrong, it's problematic on the weekend. So we looked at what happens on billing failures or trial expirations on the weekend versus the weekday. Right? So billing failure is someone's put a credit card in, it's been charged successfully in the past, this time it failed. And obviously when it fails, we'll retry it again the next day and we'll give them a grace period and try to recover them. But what we saw was a 55% drop in the amount of, if we had a billing failure that's happened on a weekend, we were half as likely to get that person to recover it within that grace period, right? As opposed to on a weekday. Same thing for trial expiration, not as dramatic. Trial expiration being, at the end of a 30-day free trial, they didn't put it in their credit card, right, and just immediately dropped out. So, but we did see a difference in when your trial ended. If your trial ends on a Saturday, and this seems kind of obvious, right? Your trial ends on a Saturday, there's a high likelihood that you won't check your email and be like, oh shit, I need to go put my credit card in. So we turned it off. So we stopped billing on weekends. And so when we did that, we saw a 34% increase in those billing failure recoveries and a 22% increase in trial expiration recoveries, which is good. We also saw a 23% reduction in overall billing failures. I throw this in there because it's true. I don't know that it has anything to do, it might just be superfluous. When we looked at the existing cohort, when we ran weekend billing, we saw no difference in overall billing failures on the weekends. But I've heard the world of payments is kind of voodoo sometimes, so probably not charging people on the weekend probably also helps with actual charges going through. And then I have an asterisk next to the top point because what I'm talking about is recoveries, and recoveries for us mean within 7 days. So before we deactivate an account, and again, this is another thing we did before, is don't downgrade them to free, downgrade them to like a deactivated state where it's very obvious they lost functionality. That's covered in that blog post on 500. The recoveries went up, but when we look at what I call reactivations, so if there's a billing failure, we have a 34% better chance that within 7 days they're going to get back up on the plan and not have any service disruption. It's less dramatic when we look at how many people 60 days later had a working plan, right? So that 34% increase only goes down to 6% improvement when we actually look at reactivation. So maybe they did get downgraded and it did go down to the activated plan, but then they signed up afterwards. So not as dramatic as originally seemed. However, we want to get paid as soon as possible, so we don't want to wait 30 or 60 days for them to notice something went wrong. hence don't build during the weekends. All right. We did good? We good? Am I going too fast? All right. I drank 2 cups of In-N-Out tea before I got here, so I'm a little. So downgrade reasons. So this actually came from last year's talk. I was having dinner with Heaton from Kissmetrics, and I was talking about all the things we tried. And he's like, do you require people to give you a downgrade reason when they want to cancel or downgrade? I was like, no. And I was like, it seems a little tyrannical. And he's like, no, totally worth it. Totally do it. Okay. So we got back the next day and we implemented that and said, everyone who downgrades now has to tell us why. And the rationale kind of goes like, look, it's not a big ask. It's just, and you could even say fuck you. And people have written in fuck you into the downgrade reason. But it doesn't actually happen that much. And our support team doesn't hate me for it, so clearly it's not a big deal. So when we looked at, only about half the people before were ever giving us a downgrade reason. Obviously then, it didn't quite go up to 100%. I think there's a few loopholes where you don't have to. But now we're getting 66% more responses, or close to getting up towards doubling. We're about, I think, 90% of them have it in there. So why is this useful? For us, it's useful because the other thing we do is we take all those downgrade reasons and immediately pipe them into our help desk, our own UserVoice help desk, right? And this can be whatever tool you use. But pipe it in there, someone should immediately be looking at, this person just downgraded 5 minutes ago, here's why they downgraded, right? And if you only get half the people telling you why, then you're missing out just on this huge opportunity, as opposed to getting 100% to do it. And so we actually respond to 77% of those downgrade reasons. Response rate is important because ideally we respond to 100%. Why don't we? That means a quarter of them, there's really nothing we can do, right? There's company went under, I'm unemployed, whatever. But what it really indicates is we kind of look at the response rate as a kind of a proxy for how many of these things are recoverable. And then we look at, of the cohort of people that got a response on a downgrade reason, what's the change in their reactivation rate versus other people? And it's 14%. So again, these aren't earth-shattering things, right? But in a SaaS business, you are so, 10 to 20% improvements all over especially when you get to a mature place, actually mean a lot and add up in a hurry. So making sure people force them to give you downgrade reasons and pipe them back in. The thing we're actually going to try next, which maybe we'll cover next year at this talk, is we're not going to let people potentially self-service cancel their account if they're paying us. And the reason for that is because we see the same thing. A lot of reasons people cancel their account are things we can actually solve. But once they've canceled their account, it's really hard to get them to reactivate. So we will immediately probably not remove them from the billing queue, but keep their account alive for 48 hours to see if we can remediate it. Because we don't see the same, it's hard to track reactivation rates on cancellations, because if we do bring them back, it's a different account. Okay. Another thing we tried and did, satisfaction surveys. So around the same time, we said, well, we love these downgrade reasons. These are useful. How do we get ahead of, how do we get that same data, but get it before they're at the point of saying, fuck you, I'm downgrading. So we started setting out these surveys, and we put that sexy guy's face on them. That really lifted the click-through rates. So it's a really simple survey. It's not the classic, here's the survey. It's going to take 10 minutes. Click through this link. There might be, more than 10 minutes of work behind it. It's inside this email, there are 4 links. Is it all, how's your product experience been? Awesome. It's pretty good. It's okay. It's bad. Open rate on these emails is pretty good, 46%. The response rate is pretty good, 19%. Click a link. And clicking a link is completing a survey in the most basic level. And it's 25% completed when we look at unique. So we survey people about every 60 days. If you don't like us, if you say it's okay or it's bad, we ask, the next page shows you this question, right? How could it be better? Don't hold back, and they don't. 49% of people will answer this, which again, we pipe back into a ticket, which we reply to. And I don't have delta on reactivation rates for this because we don't know, right? We're self-selecting into a group that's very unhappy. But they reply back to us 40% of the time. So that's actually a really big lift in terms of engagement with some of disgruntled customers. We also do, if you give us a really positive rating, we ask you a slightly different question. What's the best part of UserVoice? 48% of people answer this. And then we have this question. Would you do us a favor? Would you tweet out what you thought was the greatest thing about UserVoice? 8% of people do that. That doesn't sound like a lot. That 5x our tweets that are saying how awesome UserVoice is. So that's awesome. We loved it so much we actually built it into our product. And so now it's like a core part of our platform is doing these in-app surveys and all that stuff I just described. So I'm getting the time signal. So we're on to the last part, and this is going to be the meatiest part, and you're going to have to hold on to your brain cap. All right. So here's our pricing grid. Does anyone like that? No. Fuck no. Jesus Christ. 12 price points, 3 products? What is this? Like, are we Oracle? So, but again, it was a marketing instrument, right? We wanted people to know we had this help desk. When we introduced those free plans, we started to get people to know that because now a plurality of them were using our help desk product. So we said, awesome. People now know UserVoice has a help desk. Let's merge this back in together. Let's get down to 4 price points. So we want to simplify this. We also found that, again, we had the same problem we had when we had $5 and free. It costs you more money to use more of our product. That's not what we want, right? We want you to use as much of UserVoice as possible, which leads to you putting more people in it, and that's how we make money. We want as much of your team in it, not you paying for every little feature you want to use. So we want to simplify this down. So this was an order of magnitude more complicated than that free. That free thing was pretty obvious. It's pretty easy. So we first need to determine what the new price points would be, and then look at our risk for conversion and existing MRR. So the first thing we did was we looked at the average across all of these plans of what were people actually paying for them, and factoring any discounts we do. Again, last talk covered a lot of things of how we use discounts and how valuable those are. So those are average price points. We said that's interesting, that's okay, but we really want some science, bitch, right? Like, we need to really figure this out because this is going to be a big change, and you really can only make pricing changes very infrequently, right? You change your pricing every month, you probably have 10 customers. So we went to this firm called Price Intelligently that we were introduced to and said, how can you help us? And so what we did is we actually surveyed, I think about 700 existing customers and 700 non-customers. The existing customers were a mix of all of our plans, right? Free users, paid users, churned users. The non-customers were people that run e-commerce companies, SaaS companies, and even media companies, right? And we asked them this survey, and some of the questions we asked are like, how much would you pay? How much is too little? How much at what point would it be a bargain? So there's like 4 different pricing questions we ask amongst these, which leads you to these graphs, and they're hard to kind of see. But what we're looking for is this thing called the indifferent price point. And it's a point at which 50% of people say it's too expensive, and 50% of people say it's too cheap. And this graph is interesting because these are 2 different plans. The one right here on the left, this is our entry-level plan. And the one on the right is the top-end plan. This little graph here is percentage of sales lost due to pricing. And so what you're looking for is this valley. What's interesting, and you kind of know anecdotally, is the people that are buying your lowest paid plan are the absolute stingiest, most price-sensitive people, hence why that valley is very narrow. The people that are on your highest plan almost don't give a fuck what it costs to a certain degree. Look at how wide. That price point, that gap goes from $75 to $100. Like the size of how much we charge for that one. So it was interesting to get this data and actually hone in on what the IPPs were for our various plan segments. And so, for example, here we go. So for a certain segment on our entry-level plan, the IPP for existing customers was $16. The IPP for market panels was $21. Turns out existing customers chronically undervalue your product, and new customers overvalue it, which is interesting. That wasn't apparently just us. The Price Intelligently guys tell me it's across the board. And our current average is $18. So when we went to build the pricing model, what we built was we said we will put our monthly prices just above the IPP, and we will put our annual prices just below the IPP. And that worked out pretty well. So risk assessment, this was a scarier transition than the $5 to free because these are lower price points across the board for a lot of our products. It represented a potential loss of about 5% of MRR by doing this change. But we knew the math. We knew we were losing business every day because we were incorrectly priced for some folks. We did A/B tests with this as well. They were kind of like the ones before. What I'm looking for in the A/B test is really just inconclusivity, right? All I'm looking for is if I got an A/B test that said you're going to cut signups in half, then I would be panicked. Anything in the margin of error, like a negative 10% or plus 10%, can't really tell. Good enough, move to the next step. So we launched this. And so one of the things we said, I said, if we're going to do this, the only way to make this work is to consider it a marketing campaign. We're giving money back to customers, right? So let's make it a marketing campaign. Let's like marshal customers. Let's go all out. So we made this blog post. We launched it on Valentine's Day. We said we love you. 2/3 of our customers got free functionality, new help desk product for nothing added onto their account. Another group of people saved on average about 18%, right, by switching to these new plans. So things that worked in this migration path that we messaged people, we really pushed that for them to switch to annuals. And people, like we said, you'll save even more money if you switch to an annual billing plan. And it's cheaper. And 22% of people switch to an annual billing plan. This is important because our average is 9%. So over double the number of normal people switch to annuals, which is great because that's cash flow. And when you look at the amount of money we lost in terms of MRR lost versus cash flow that we got because we got all these people to convert to annual, 7x difference in cash flow. So like this campaign, though, cost us, in a GAAP perspective, revenue cost us money. It actually, from a cash flow perspective, put more in the bank for a good half year. Here's one thing that failed when we tried to drive social actions like we did before, like in the surveys, where we said, hey, why don't you tweet about how great this was? Hey, this company gave me money back. Only 2% of people tweeted. Now, part of that is because this page was broken for the first hour of this migration. So that sucks. But in the end analysis, we actually we were able to get some press around this. We had I think 1,000% increase in the number of tweets about UserVoice on this day. So we turned pricing mechanics into marketing, which was also very good. And again, trials roughly shifted. Like some trials went up, some trials went down. Here's what really matters, right? We had a 10% increase in trial signups. We had a 10% increase in conversions. And what we really look at is pricing. A lot of times when we look at churn and we're analyzing all these downgrade reasons and we're codifying them into, is it product, is it pricing? A lot of the things we got back with is people was frustrated with pricing. Q2 is typically our worst quarter of the year. Why? Because we're kind of infrastructure for your business, right? Support and customer feedback. You are not setting that up in the summer because you're not launching your company in the summer and you're not taking on big new projects in the summer. So Q2 is usually really bad. However, this Q2 was the best quarter ever. And I think some of that's attributed to the fact of now we've kind of more honed in and nailed on our price points. Our churn rates are way down because we've eliminated one of the biggest reasons for it. So that's all I've got. Let's see. Quick. YOLO. I think I'm out of time, so if you have questions, again, read the blog on 500 Startups, the 2 posts on there. We'll eventually turn this into a blog post too, and when we do, I appreciate any tweets about it. We also run our own conference called UserConf. If you have a support team or community manager or product folks, we run a whole conference around tips and tricks about how to retain customers. So we're doing that October at the San Francisco Zoo. We'd love to see you there. Thank you so much.